And thank you, Liam, and the Irish Wall Towns Network for letting me share with you the experience of a very long experience of getting to where we are, hopefully by September this year. I don't know if any of you know Kilmallock or have ever been in Kilmallock, but we're thoroughly blessed with the amount of town wall that we have left. The original circumference of the wall was 1,700 metres, and we have approximately 1,200 metres still standing in a reasonable height. And not only that, but everywhere it still remains as a property boundary. It has only been breached in 2 places. And where we are particularly blessed is along the western defences, because not only are they practically all still standing, but they're looking out on a landscape that's relatively unchanged, and we have the town ditch running nearly half the length of it. And so if you look at a modern map of Kilmallock today, you can easily trace the line of the town wall around the town. The only part that it got built up on was on the southern side. So there's our west wall running all the way down to a remaining gate. So from the northeast corner up here, there's a little bit missing. There's about 40 metres missing here. There's a tiny bit. I've only just discovered it this year. Tiny about a metre of it up here. A gap of about 40 metres, and then a continuous line down to where SuperValu broke through. Well, not SuperValu, but the supermarket broke through in the 1980s here. A 15-metre gap. Right through to Blossom Gate, which is still standing, 15th century gate with single lane traffic through it. So from the top corner to Blossom Gate is 600 metres, and of that there's 537 metres of the wall standing. This is taken from the new school that's recently opened there in the last 2 years, and you can see that you're looking out on an unchanged landscape with the ditch, dry ditch running down here. When you get around the corner, it's actually infill, but it's beautifully appointed by being marshy and having loads of wonderful yellow flaggers during the summer, which is a lovely way of marking it out. It is filled in further down. You can see the Roman Catholic Church here, and the other later fortifications this is what's left of a 17th century earthen bastion, which would have dealt with cannon fire and stuff like that. This is further south, where the ditch is more filled in. You can see the flaggers here, and then the ditch sort of is relatively well filled in from this point on. And from there on, then we go down to what is now a SuperValu car park at the back of the shop. And you can see there's quite a lot of constraints. This isn't coming up very well. Quite a lot of constraints because of the position of the bastion, and you had the ditch was originally the whole way up the west side. So the great thing that happened in Kilmallock really for us, Limerick County Council was very well aware of the heritage aspect of Kilmallock, and in the early 2000s had done an urban renewal plan engaging Shaftesbury architects and doing some very good urban renewal throughout the town. They got rid of all the wirescape. They created a new small car park using backland area and opening up a beautiful sort of alleyway beside King's Castle, which stands astride the main street. But having said that, the wall was the neglected part of the equation. And so in 2005, when the Heritage Council had the wisdom to form the Irish Wall Towns Network, it was a seminal statement for wall towns all around the country, but particularly for Kilmallock. Because one thing that local authorities do understand is match funding and a stream of income, and when people are taking notice and you have plans written and things like that, and it's something that it's how they function and how they cope and how they can do things. So one of the first things we were able to do in partnership with the Irish Wall Towns Network was to produce our conservation and management plan, and at the same time a public realm plan. And the public realm plan was particularly important because it fed into our own local area plan. And in the public realm plan was one of the first times when we had the idea of doing a circumferential route around the town walls. And so it became a policy in our local area plan. And I'm happy to say it's one of the times when we can actually say when we get to the end of the plan we have actually reached our objectives. As you can see, we carried out, on the west side, we carried out 6 capital projects. The wall was in quite poor condition in several places, so there was a lot of work that had to be done before we'd even consider creating a public space on the exterior. It had been broken down, largely undermined at the base, and then having fallen out in several places. Unfortunately, only in the 1990s, in fact, because Dukas had carried out a survey in 1990, and it had been relatively intact. There had only actually been one fall. So one of our first things was to get rid of vegetation and do a really thorough survey, and then pick our spots that we had to deal with and tick them off year by year, as you can see. This was our latest one. There was when we took the ivy back in this lady's back garden, we had rather shock horror. There was a section that was over 3 meters in height and was not tied into either end and was gently listing into her back garden where her grandchildren were playing. So we were very glad to solve that problem. You can see with relatively simple works, consolidating and repointing and flaunching and clearing the vegetation off. This was one of the first really bad falls that had happened, and we were able to consolidate it. Then the next thing that we got was the rural economic development zone, REDS, where, strangely enough, Kilmallock was actually partnered with Charleville in County Cork, which was actually its natural enemy. But we ended up getting on fairly well, so that was great because it was the first of the sort of tranches of money that has been kind of coming at local authorities since. And we were able to develop, we knew that we'd have to do non-invasive surveys, for example, before we could put the walkway in. So we were able to do that, we were able to carry that out. We also did a preliminary design on the walkway to devise what would the best surface be, the best route, drainage, all that sort of thing. So those were in the bag, as they say. So the project was getting closer and closer to being shovel ready. And it is one thing I'd say to you. I mean, 2008 was when our public realm plan was. We're 2018 now. We have spent a lot of money, but we've done it slowly, and we have got there in the end. The other big thing that the county council had to step in with was with the land transfers. We were lucky that, in fact, there were only 3 landowners on the outside, but that all had to be worked through as well. And we've had great cooperation from all our people in the inside of the wall. There's over 20 people owning property against the wall on the inside, and they have had nothing but good cooperation from them, tramping through their backyards constantly. And then very late, the rural REDS in 2016 was a late announcement, and because we had all our plans and we were shovel ready at that stage, we got a large tranche of money to actually put the pathway in place, and that it's almost finished now. And part of that scheme was also, we felt very strongly that the residents within the wall should be protected. So areas where we'd just consolidated the wall, we actually made sure that the wall was a minimum of 2.5 meters high from the outside, and we got permission from the National Monument Service to rebuild. Mostly the stone was actually in place where it had fallen from, and we were reasonably certain there was no features or anything like that, so we worked through with ministerial consent to do those works. We also had to do advanced archaeological testing to resolve issues. So, as I say, we were quite constrained in how and where we could put the path, etc. And we had to do Part 8, which all went through, and then our ministerial consent for raising our levels of wall. And then this is our REDS areas. For example, this area, this is part of our consolidation under the Irish Wall Towns network, and all that stone was actually lying in front of the wall where it had fallen, and through REDS then we were able to bring it all up to a height, which solved 2 problems as well, because you always want to keep the stone from where it fell, and so it means we were able to reuse it in a proper manner and it's not lying around or likely to get lost. We've left one low spot here because we're hoping that is actually a burgage plot belonging to the local authority, which is right beside hopefully will be our new interpretive centre. So we may end up coming up and over the wall eventually. So this is the walkway where it's coming up by the National School. It's quite constrained and has had to go in quite close to the actual town ditch, which is open. But for the rest of it, we've kept it as far away from the wall as possible so that you can get a real appreciation of the height of the wall. And then our great news this year is we applied for and were successful in the Historic Towns Initiative. And what we've tried to do with that is to complete all of the consolidation works to the town wall, because there was quite a stretch of it left still untouched. It wasn't in huge immediate danger, but particularly if it's going to become a public area, it was necessary to make sure that everything was safe both for the wall and for the public. And it's a very exciting prospect, because the whole town is really looking forward to the walkway being open, and it's almost going to create a parallel public street in the town. And you can see these are the areas that we still have to deal with, and you can see that the wall is well over, it's 5 metres in some places along here. It's absolutely a fabulous asset for the town. And lower down near Super Value car park, there was sheds up against the wall, and there's a concrete apron there of about 250 square metres, which we're going to retain and just maybe create a kind of a nice amenity space that can have, benches and games and stuff like that, and can also function as an events area. And that in itself as well may help to create a sort of a festival area as well for the town on small events. And we were also lucky in Town and Village Renewal. Yeah. And that meant that on our other side, we're putting another 550 metre path along the river on the east side of town, and we're working on a mural which is going to go up on the gable. And so we have our west path, which is going all the way up. We have some of our east paths already in place. This is the new bit that's due to go in this year. We have a footbridge just about to be installed down here to link up with the pathway around here. And our last little bit that we need to put in place is this little section here, which hopefully we'll do in the next 5 years or so. So thank you very much for that.